Welcome to The Explainer. Let's just dive right into it. Today, we're looking at one of the absolutely most compelling figures in recent storytelling, Luthen Rael. We're going to examine him not just as, a dangerous man fighting in a galactic rebellion, but really as this deeply intricate psychological puzzle. We're exploring his real tragedy, specifically what happens when sacrifice becomes your entire identity. So, we're going to use the source material to basically break down the exact architecture of his mind. Get comfortable and let's solve this thing together. He already accepted losing himself. Now, I really want to hook you immediately with this concept because it's literally the bedrock of his character. Luthen might easily be the most dangerous man in his universe, but it's absolutely crucial that we understand why. It's not because he's the strongest fighter, and actually, it's not even because he's the smartest person in the room, though, let's be real, he usually is. No, his danger stems from this dark, absolute acceptance. When a person reaches a point where they've completely made peace with their own destruction, when they've already grieved their own moral and personal loss, they become almost impossible to stop. I mean, think about it. There is no leverage you can use against a man who has already thrown himself away.
Section 1. The Big Misread. Peeling back the surface. So what's super interesting about how people perceive Luthen is that these surface-level traits, well, they aren't entirely wrong. When people look at him, they see a brilliant strategist. They see a committed revolutionary. They see this grand mastermind moving pieces around on a galactic chessboard. And I'll confidently acknowledge that, yeah, on a surface level, all of that is totally true. He undeniably performs those roles perfectly. But if we just stop our analysis right there, we miss the entire point of his character. Those are just the mechanics of what he does. The real engine driving his actions, that deep psychological motivation keeping him going, is actually much, much darker than simply wanting to win a war.
Section 2. The Engine. Deconstructing the core belief. Freedom is worth becoming someone you may never come back from. This is straight from his incredibly famous monologue. And I really want to stress here, this isn't just a piece of good writing meant to make a scene sound dramatic. It is the absolute skeleton key to understanding him. He openly admits that he's burning his life to make a sunrise that he knows he will never personally see. And what that means is he isn't actually investing in a victory he gets to enjoy. Instead, he's investing in finding meaning through extreme sacrifice. His entire self-worth is totally tied up in the act of giving himself up. Which leads us to pivot sharply to a pretty terrifying question. What happens when peace finally comes? At first glance, right? Sacrificing everything for a noble cause sounds incredibly heroic. But here is the darker angle the source material is presenting to us. If absolute sacrifice is the singular thing that gives your life meaning, if your whole existence is validated by what you give up, well then, winning the war actually becomes a psychological threat. You're no longer just fighting for freedom, you are actively fighting to preserve an identity that's been built entirely by struggle.
Section 3. The Price of Detachment. The Terrifying Cost of Effectiveness.
Let's look at his perceived strengths versus the dark reality. On the surface, he can lie without flinching, he can manipulate his closest allies, and he can spend human lives strategically. Most people simply cannot do this. It feels like an immense strength, doesn't it? But look at the reality behind those traits. These aren't superpowers. They're the traits of someone who has intentionally trained himself not to feel the full weight of his actions. He's detached enough to be incredibly effective. His terrifying capability is only possible because all those usual human limits and moral boundaries, they just disappear when a person fundamentally believes that their soul is already spent. He acts without limits simply because he believes he has absolutely nothing left to protect inside himself.
Section 4. The Cassian Contrast. Searching for a different path.
Look at how these two men mirror each other. On one hand, we have Luthen. His identity is entirely built by struggle, and he has already paid the ultimate moral price. On the other hand, we have Cassian, who represents this incredibly rare possibility of becoming part of the fight without fully becoming the fight. And this contrast is absolutely paramount. It tells us that Luthen isn't merely out there recruiting soldiers to hold blasters. Deep down, Luthen might actually be desperately searching for proof. He needs to see that it is possible for someone to win this war without paying the exact same devastating, soul-crushing price that he did. Cassian is essentially his hope that survival without a total loss of self is actually real.
Section 5. The Tragedy of Survival. Living in the world you built.
So, the really crucial point here is how this mindset is constructed. Notice the sequence. Number 1, hardship makes them sharp. Number 2, pressure makes them focused. And number 3, pain gives them direction. Now, I want to address you directly for a second, because this character study applies heavily to real-world psychology. This is exactly how so many people build themselves through extreme adversity and survival. It's an incredibly effective coping mechanism to survive trauma, right? But it creates a dangerous feedback loop. Your entire sense of self becomes completely reliant on having an antagonist.
Which leaves us with this absolute gut punch of a realization. Who are you when there's nothing left to fight? If you've built your entire identity around surviving a struggle, peace just becomes a void. Luthen might very well help create freedom for the galaxy, sure, but the ultimate tragedy is that he may not have the slightest idea how to actually live inside that freedom. Peace is going to feel deeply unfamiliar, maybe even intolerable to a mind that has been so entirely shaped and hardened by constant war. To summarize his true power, we really have to recognize one stark reality. He made peace with becoming unrecognizable. Luthen Rael is not powerful simply because he gave up his time, his money, or his comfort. No, he's powerful because of this dark, terrifying acceptance of his own total transformation. He looked in the mirror, saw a monster forming, and decided the monster was necessary. He accepted that to fight the darkness, he literally had to let the darkness consume him.
And that leaves us with one final, lingering question to end our explainer today. He may win the war, but did he already lose himself to fight it? Take a moment to really reflect on the true cost of his war. When you sacrifice your entire soul for a sunrise you'll never see, who is actually left to claim the victory? It's a profound psychological tragedy, brilliantly disguised as a rebellion. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking these deep questions, and I'll catch you next time.